So what is grassroots organizing? So basically, this is a picture from Natalie's and my time in Loudoun working. It's basically building the power of the people and speaking truth to power and advocating for what we want. Does anybody else have thoughts on what do you consider grassroots organizing, or what's your image of what it is?
A lot of thinking about who's in the conversation.
Yeah, that's a really important point, because often you'll look around and there'll only be kind of one community there, and it's not really representing the true community that's out there. Really good point.
And also bringing the communities. We're doing it with them, not for them, because then it is not true grassroots. And I think that's a practice that we have to really re-embrace and refocus, because we still see lots of, I'm doing it for you, but I'm not doing it with you.
Yeah.
So a true grassroots for me includes, the people who we are representing as well.
Yeah, great point.
I have no preconceived ideas about it.
Okay, that's great. Anybody else? All right. Oops, sorry. Yeah.
That's okay. It kind of echoes what's been said, but maybe a focus on the who and not only the what, and not treating people as means to an end, even if it's a good end of shifting policy in a good way, but really connecting with people to know their stories.
And by the way, if you see me looking to the side, I've got another computer and I can see more of you over here. So please forgive me if it looks like I'm not looking at you. Anybody else?
I actually have a question, and you might get into this in the training, but I'm a little bit confused about the difference between organizing and advocacy. So I don't know if you're going to touch on that at all.
That's a good question.
That's a good question. So I would say really quickly that advocacy is it tends to be around some kind of policy issue that you're pushing for, and it's talking to the people in power who can make the decisions to make it happen. So you are advocating to them. Whereas organizing, I see as basically building the people power, so that when you advocate, you've got a lot more people around you than just, because you can do advocacy on your own. So grassroots organizing is really getting the community behind a collective thing that you're working for.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Anybody else? All right, Natalie, I still want to find this banner. We've lost it in someone's house somewhere. Okay, so this is a picture that I kind of created out of two images that's often talked about. So it's the big fish and the little fish. So you have a big fish, and the big fish is, say, a congressperson or the CEO of a company, somebody who has power to make things happen and is a real decision maker. And then the little fish are all of us who maybe, like I'm a former elected official. I'll tell you, really feel when you lose your power from one day to the next, because I had the power to make decisions and then I had no power to make decisions. It's pretty remarkable. So those of us who don't have that power through being elected or whatever, to be heard and to be able to stand up and engage with those big fish, it really helps to have a whole bunch of us. And if a whole bunch of us are also swimming in the same direction and working towards the same target, we can often engage in kind of just as powerful as a way. So does that make sense? It's kind of an image to keep in your mind. Basically, how do you get a whole bunch of fish swimming together towards the same target? All right. So first I want to start to do grassroots organizing work. It takes a lot of energy, it takes a lot of time, and it takes a lot of perseverance. And it's really important to know why you're doing it and to be conscious about that. And so we're going to start with a project or a exercise of telling your story and kind of coming up with it. And I'm going to share my story as an example. So first of all, I started on this 21 years ago because I dated a climate scientist. I didn't know what climate change was. I'd never heard those words. And so I went, I like to say, from 0 to 100 miles per hour because he was an expert on the Amazon and climate change. And, so I just learned about it. And I actually, after what I learned from him, I changed my life. I left the business world and I went into organizing around this because I realized how serious it was and that we were not paying attention. Well, now 20 years later, things have really changed for me and my story has really changed. This is a map of the area that burned in Colorado last December. I believe it was December 30th. It's right on the foothills of the Rockies near Boulder. It's in Boulder County, but it's a little town called Superior and then Louisville. And I actually bought, my mom and I were gonna, in this top circle near Wanaka Lake Park, my mom and I bought 2 condos. And as I tell this story, basically, if we had been in those condos, we would have seen this horrific fire coming straight for us. So I just want to share a couple of videos from it. This is Chuck E. Cheese's, and I don't know if you saw, but there was fire out in the parking lot. You can see the fire out there. The winds were going 115 miles per hour.
This is craziness in Chuck E. Cheese. I don't think we're safe in our cars. I can't get this far. Barely.
I think it's the wind pushing against the door.
Is it?
Go, go, go.
Intense winds. There's smoke right there. Right over, right behind some wind and fire like this.
Okay, and then next, come on. This is the Costco where I used to shop.
Go east, yeah, towards Denver. Okay. Go towards Denver. Evacuate now. East, go. Evacuate. Everybody head east. Go towards 36. Move now. Leave your stuff. Go. The fire's at the back. Go. Everybody head east. Get out of the store now. When you get on the road, go eastbound. Everybody evacuate the store now.
We're evacuating.
Get out of the store, head eastbound, leave your stuff, go now. Evacuate Costco now, head eastbound, leave your carts, go.
Leave your cars? Wow.
Everybody evacuate, get out of the store now. Go eastbound. Head towards Denver. Head towards Denver. So evacuate now. Leave whatever you're doing. Go. Fire out back. Fire out back. Let's go. Drop whatever you're doing. Head east. Boulder County Sheriff's Office. Evacuate now.
Ahí va, bro, pero no tengo carro.
No habla.
Don't have a car.
You don't have a car?
No.
Get in. Back this side. Back door, back door. Door, see.
So I just, I wanted to show you that whole video because at the end there was that woman, she didn't have a car to get out. And as we're dealing with this, just the most vulnerable people in our community, you know, not everybody has a car to get away. All right, and this is what it looked like the next morning. I always cry. This always happens to me. I'm sorry, but I just want to say this is particularly heartbreaking to me because the people, nobody died, but they wouldn't let the people back to get their pets. So their dogs and their cats, they all died. And this is my community. So that happened last year. Sorry, stop. Okay. Then this is my real why. This is my daddy and my stepmother, Kathy, and my two nephews. And they live in Chico, California. And that's right next door to Paradise, which was the town that burned down in California in 2018. My dad used to bike there, just to give you an idea how close by it is. And the fire burned right up to the edge of Chico. And I went through days of worry about him. And I was on Twitter trying to track it all. And people were saying, you know, has anybody seen my aunt? She's disabled. She's in Paradise. And in that fire, 88 people died. And this is a picture of a very good friend of ours, her house, which is obviously not there anymore. So unfortunately for me, climate change has become an incredibly personal issue. And, you know, for many of our fellow Americans, I hope you all haven't had such close brushes with the disasters that are starting to happen. This is happening to more and more people. So that's my story. So now we're going to work on your story. So basically, I have some questions for you. Have you, your family, your friends, your community been directly impacted by climate change? I will tell you, here in Northern Virginia, I've had 2 roofs blow off my house in the last decade. And one of the storms, it wasn't a hurricane or anything. There were tarps all over Loudoun County. A lot of roofs blew off. What fires you up when you look at the press? What really gets you? Like for me, it was Hurricane Dorian when it stalled over the Bahamas for 36 hours. That haunts me. What was the moment when you realized you really wanted to get involved? And what do you love? And that could be your pets, it could be coffee, it could be wine. There's all kinds of things that are going to be impacted by climate and that are being impacted. So we're going to do that exercise now. I sent you all should have the document that I sent you ahead of time. If you don't have it, let me know and I'll email it to you. But it has, and I can put that the questions back up. But if you could just take a couple of minutes and think about your story and what you would tell other people, why you do this. Okay, and then for those of you who might not have a lot to write, I want to just also show you the next exercise, which is how do you see yourself taking action? So where is there momentum in your life? What do you care about the most? And that could be like an issue, like a lot of people really care about trees as an example in parks. What types of actions do you want to pursue? Who do you know who would join you in those pursuits? How might we work together to support each other in those initiatives? And then your thoughts on what seem like your best next steps. But I want to just say, if you're still writing your story, finish that first, just for those of you who are moving faster. Okay, so I'm going to move on, but I encourage you to go back and finish your thoughts around this, because this really is around centering you and where you are right now. All right, so first step in organizing is to know what you're talking about, at least to the extent of you having a strong opinion and your reasons why for it. I want to emphasize you do not need to be a climate scientist or an expert to make a difference. And don't let that stop you from speaking up. But it is really good to get educated. And I'm going to show you some places where you can get more educated. But basically, I wanted to say, if you're really interested in a particular issue, I encourage you to become an expert on it and to be able to teach others and bring them along with you. So first of all, it's really important to go to reputable sources. And if you have any questions about that, I'd be happy to help you with that. There's a lot of misinformation, unfortunately, out there. So, often like I'll make sure it's a government source, like a federal government source, or a reputable scientific source, National Academy of Sciences, International Panel on Climate Change, things like that. And again, I can help you if you're kind of looking for reputable sources. Then there's great books out there nowadays that didn't exist when I started on this path. I want to particularly recommend Drawdown. I've been doing this for over 20 years, and I didn't realize food waste was such a huge problem. It's actually number 3. That's completely changed me and my thinking around food. So I really recommend that book in particular. It goes through all the different things we could do and how much of an impact it would be. And food waste is huge, it turns out. Join organizations like us. We have a bunch of people who are really into different issues and have become much more an expert than I could ever be. And we share it. And so, Sierra Club, Faith Alliance. There's lots of different organizations, and they also track like what's going on with different policies and can tell you when to speak up, when public hearings are, and things like that. Okay, this one might sound weird for those of you who don't like Twitter, but Twitter is an awesome place for climate because for some reason the climate scientists have really taken on Twitter, and you can follow them. And it's how I find out when major new reports get released. I don't see it in the press anymore. I see it on Twitter. And this is another place I'd be happy to give you ideas of who to follow. One I recommend is Michael Mann, who wrote this book with the image on the right. He's awesome on Twitter. Definitely follow him. And then study what's going on at the local level, the regional level, the state level, and the federal level. Now, you can't do everything, right? But let's say you were really into making communities more walkable. That really has to do with all of those levels, believe it or not. But there's lots of good information. And I also wanted to say, often when you call up, say your county government, it's amazing how much they'll just sit there and talk to you. I just had a 40-minute conversation with the fleet manager for Loudoun County Public Schools about electric school buses. And he told me so much, and I got up to speed on everything I needed to know for now. It was great. So they often will just talk with you because their salaries are paid by our tax dollars, especially if they know you're not doing any, I'm out to get you. I'm actually trying to be supportive, actually. So I promise I won't use anything you say like in the press against you or something. Poor government people are kind of getting harassed nowadays. Okay, basic elements of the campaign plan. So now we're going to get into nuts and bolts. So first of all, you need to have, what is the problem you're trying to solve? That's like step one. What am I trying to solve? And we're going to go through each of these. So I'm going to just very quickly outline it right now. Then what is the solution to that problem? And what's your vision for a better world with that solution in it? What is your goal? That's probably the most important thing you have to figure out. What's your goal? And it's possible you'd have a couple of goals, but usually you just want one. And then who are you targeting? Because, and this will be driven by, for instance, if a group of decision makers need to decide on something, they would be your target. But the target could be a corporation. And then venue, we'll go through that, but basically it's like, is it the federal government? Is it the courts? There's different venues that you would work in. Then you want to have a strategy. This is the one I always get confused on. We'll talk about that. Then you want to have strong messaging. Then you get into tactics. And I just want to say, grassroots organizers are always going to the tactics first without doing these other really important things. Then you want to have metrics on how effective you've been. You need to think through who's going to actually make this happen, who's going to be on your team. And then possibly you might need some money. And so you need a budget. All right, so starting now, we're going to just walk through a few of these. So what's the problem and what is the solution? Well, you can think on a really big level, or you can think on much smaller levels. This is an example of thinking about the big problem, climate change. Katharine Hayhoe is just a rock star climate scientist. I highly recommend following her on Twitter. And here she is on Twitter with this tweet. This is actually framing that comes from George Mason University. They have a group that studies communications on climate change. And this is what they say we should all memorize and say over and over again. Climate change, it's real, it's us, it's serious, and it's becoming dangerous, but there are solutions and there is hope. The science is clear. The faster we reduce emissions, the less impacts there will be. And just say that over and over and over again, because with messaging, by the way, you might be sick to death of saying it, and then it might be breaking through with the public, maybe, probably not yet, so say it some more. But if you get nothing else out of this training, if you can memorize this framing for climate change, it's what they have found to be the most effective. And when it says it's us, it's human beings are causing it. Okay, Then here's an example of the problem and solutions in much more scientific gobbledygook. And I love the IPCC and the scientists, but they're not great messengers. I mean, their messages aren't as pithy, let's put it that way. But I thought this was pretty good. This is language from the chair when they were releasing the report, and I just want to read it. We are at a crossroads. This is the time for action. We have the tools and know-how required to limit warming and secure a livable future. The preceding IPCC reports are clear. Human-induced climate change is widespread, rapid, and intensifying. It is a threat to our well-being and all other species. It is a threat to the health of our entire planet. Any further delay in concerted global climate action will miss a rapidly closing window. This is the report that gives us options, and then it has a bunch of different things. And those are, by the way, all issues you could pick to become, the local expert on. So it's a lot more words, but it's pretty dire. I mean, that's what the scientists are saying. So thank you for being here today and doing this work and leaning in. And I want to help you become as powerful as possible. That's my goal. All right. So the first thing you need to do is set clear and inspiring goals. I'm a former employee of Environment America, and one of their absolute best features of that organization is they're very good at putting goals together. So I want to just invite you, go to environmentamerica.org and look under their work. It says our work, and then they work on conservation, they work on energy. Anyway, look at the goals that they put at the top of each of their webpage. That's the kind of gold standard for setting clear and inspiring goals. And to get to those goals, they put a lot of thought into it. Was there a question? No, okay. So this is an example of what they've put together for transportation. I actually helped work on this. I actually set the first goal, make all new cars electric by 2035. The thinking there is if all new cars that are sold in the country by 2035 are electric, by 2050 will be, that takes about 15 years for cars to age out of being in service. So by 2050, we'd be all electric. That might not be fast enough now with what the scientists are saying. Buses are a little easier to move faster on because they're controlled by the government. So we made it 2030. And then the third goal, I don't know how they're planning to measure that, but it's still a really good goal. It's a clear goal for people, to basically get out of their cars and move in other ways. Now I'm going to put up a set of other goals to give you examples of really important goals, but maybe not clear and maybe not quite as inspiring. And I want to talk about them. So invest 500.
I'm sorry. Whose goals are these? I apologize for.
Oh, it's Environment America.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. And I can put that in chat, environmentamerica.org.
Okay. And are you going to be posting or giving us these slides?
I don't know if I'll do the slides, but I can share the recording.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. And by the way, any questions you have, put it in the chat. I'm going to be saving the chat too, and I can get back to you all there. Not in the chat right away, but I can get back to you by email, or feel free to email me if you don't hear from me. Okay, so this is one that the federal government's doing right now through the Bipartisan Infrastructure Act. And I don't actually know if 2023 is the real number. I said that, so don't quote me, don't quote the federal government on that. But right now they are actively doing grants of $500 million to localities for electric school buses. So that's one. Transition Loudoun County Public Schools to all electric by 2026. By the way, I don't know if Loudoun wants to do that by 2026. This is just an example of what it could be. I know that they're interested. They're on their way to 50 buses right now. Increase transit and non-motorized commuting to 30%. That's an actual quote from the Climate Action Plan from Fairfax County. This is one I made up. Create complete streets within 2-mile radius of the Ashburn Metro Station. This is something I'm actively working on, and it's not a great goal because 2 miles radius includes a bunch of data centers and we don't need complete streets there. So that goal needs work. Make it easier
What
and
is-
safer to bike and walk metro. Yep.
I'm sorry to interrupt. What is the definition of a complete street?
Yeah, so this is, okay, so I'm gonna give you all these goals and then I want to talk about them. Like why are they good or not good? But that's a really great point because general people do not know what complete streets is, right? So we would need to have a link to the federal plan for complete streets. And a complete street means basically it's safe for all modes of transportation. So it's got sidewalks, it's got protected bike lanes, and it works for cars as well. That's what a complete street is. And it has safe crossings and things like that for pedestrians. Okay, make it easier and safer to bike and walk to metro. Increase plug-in electric hybrid vehicles and battery electric vehicles to at least 15% of all light-duty vehicle registrations by 2030. Okay, what is good or bad about these goals?
Well, they all have to do with transportation
Yes.
and they're all locally focused. Well, maybe.
They're all urban and
Yes.
and city focused. Doesn't help me in Spotsylvania County.
Good point.
Measurable.
They're measurable. That's good. Yep.
They all are actionable.
Actionable. Do people know what a light duty vehicle is?
Pickup truck.
You do?
SUV.
Okay. I think normal humans don't know what that is.
I don't think many people comprehend what $500 million is.
Yeah. It's like, how many school buses does that even buy? I don't know. Yeah. How much do we really need if we really wanted to do it?
My point there is that if you don't understand what the number is, then you have no ability to evaluate relative to, yes, this was used appropriately for this and all funding went to that, and there's no accountability.
Yeah, good point. That's a very good point. Okay, so I kind of put this gobbledygook of different kinds of goals that I see out there, just to make the point that it's hard to write a clear and inspiring goal. And for grassroots organizing, because you're trying to get all those little fish swimming together, it doesn't work. Like that last one as an example, plug an electric hybrid vehicle, like normal Americans would, like, you'd lose them. They wouldn't, that would not be a good goal for them. Now, make it easier and safer to bike and walk to metro. That's pretty straightforward. I think a normal American could understand that. And I just want to say where I got that one from. Okay, are you going to fast forward? You know, I'm going to have to come out of this for a second. For some reason, sometimes this gets stuck. Okay, so I got that goal from a headline that the Washington Post wrote for me for an op-ed that I wrote. So I had the Washington Post editors write that goal. So it's a pretty good one, I think. Okay, so let's look at another set of goals, another area, and this is conservation. So this is the goal that Environment America came up with: protect 30% of our land by 2030. Do you understand that?
That's too esoteric. How could you possibly measure that? And what does protect mean?
Yeah.
So I'm sorry, I'm not asking you to answer the question.
Yeah, well, let me show you. So there is actually a federal goal, and it's the shorthand is 30 by 30, is to conserve at least 30% of US land and freshwater and the ocean areas as well by 2030. That's actually an official goal of the federal government. And then put another way is conserve and restore America the Beautiful, much more poetic. This is an example of a local, how we might actually protect 30% of our land. It's not just the Amazon down in South America. We could protect the rural land right here in our area. There's an active,
That's a region.
what was that?
Sorry, I was explaining what the rural crescent is to Jack. I'm sorry, I'm muting.
Oh, so the rural crescent is, yeah, that's the rural part of Prince William County. And then, but really good point that that's not a great goal because a lot of people don't know what the rural crescent is, right? That would be a turnoff. This is another example of not a great goal. This is a very specific proposal that nobody really knows about. So that's would probably not engage the public. How about this one? This is a Fairfax County Energy and Climate Action Plan goal.
It's just too long.
Right? And every, what's a census block? You know, like, yeah, not a great one. And then this is a goal from one of my former campaigns. And I want to I'm going to talk you through this campaign to just give you an idea of what a grassroots organizing campaign and goal looks like. So, okay, so this is a real life story from the very beginning of my organizing days. So I lived in the eastern part of Loudoun County. This is the map of Loudoun County in the suburban policy area. And when I got here, the developers were trying to, basically they wanted to build houses all the way out to the Blue Ridge Mountains. And it was 200,000 acres of land. It's that big green chunk. And then they also wanted to put a lot more houses in the place that's called the transition policy area. So that was the problem, that we were looking at lots more houses far away from jobs, which was going to cause a lot of traffic. So this is me in my 30s standing. We created a campaign that we called Campaign for Loudoun's Future. Pretty vanilla sounding, not sure what that's about. And then promoting reasonable growth for the county. Not great. I mean, it's okay, right? I mean, it says what we were trying to do, but it's not very compelling. We actually went to the polls, though, with a petition that said, say no to 40,000 new houses, say no to 400,000 new car trips, because it's 10 trips per day per house, say no to higher taxes. That was basically our platform. And we went out with 100 volunteers to the presidential election polls. So we were standing outside the polls, legally distanced. You have to be like, I think 40 feet from the door. And we had this, we had like a map and we had the petition. My goal with 100 volunteers was to get 1,000 signatures. That day, we got 13,767 signatures, which, I mean, we blew the goal out of the water. I personally got 1,000 signatures. And it was just an example of a grassroots campaign that really resonated with our community. And people were like, give me that petition, and signed it. I mean, they were passionate about signing it. Then we took all the petition signatures. And by the way, these were literally voters, right? These were people going in to vote. And we gave it to the Board of Supervisors, and we did a big kind of montage of all of the signatures. It was very, very effective. The other thing we did is we asked people for their emails. And this was back in 2003 when the whole digital organizing was just kind of starting to get going. We spent the next 3 years emailing people. I'm going to show you that next. But then we also worked with a whole bunch of local groups, and we worked in coalition. And some of those groups I created, and I'll tell you that story a little later as a tactic. But anyway, this is an example of the emails we sent. And we had, by this point, had come up with the goal of don't supersize Loudoun. This was back when McDonald's was getting criticized for all its supersized me, all the meals. I don't think this message would work at this point because that's just not part of kind of the general media landscape. But back then, everybody knew what supersizing was. And it just, people got it right away. It's like, don't do that to our community. And anyway, we worked for 3 years, and we got, for instance, you saw these bumper stickers all over the county, and they really stuck out on cars like a sore thumb. And we made sure they were the kind that you can peel off really easily from your car. That was really important. So anyway, we actually won, which I still is to this day, I pinch myself that we actually won because it was nearly, it felt like an impossible feat, but we got a lot of little fish swimming together, and the big fish, they blinked and they voted no. We got 5 out of 9 votes. And now I'm really proud to say people love rural Loudoun. It's DC's wine country. It's still really beautiful. And that's just something I'll go to my grave being very proud of having done this grassroots. And I just want to say, I did not know what I was doing when I started, and I just started going to trainings. And then I worked with a lot of really smart people, and we did all that strategy work, and not just a bunch of random tactics, and we won. So I still can't believe we won. So, okay, now the next exercise is, sorry, I've lost my place. I think, oh, setting a clear goal. So I want you to just take a moment, a few minutes, and we're actually right at break time too. So we're going to take a 5-minute break and then maybe a couple more minutes. And I just want you to think about what you are personally really interested in right now and try to write a goal. And I just want to say it's really hard to write a goal. And so you might have to write it like 10 different times. So don't like wordsmith right away, just get it out of your head and then start seeing if you can come up with something compelling. And when we come back, if anybody thinks they came up with a really compelling goal, we'll share them. Okay, so I will be right back. Oops. All right, everyone, I'm going to bring us back together. I just want to say this is one of my favorite pictures I've ever taken of the land that I have passionately defended for many years. And my goal is to protect this land. So, okay, so does anyone want to share some of your thoughts about goals and what you want to do?
I'll start. Andrea.
Yeah.
This is completely new for me. Okay, so my thought would be keeping it local to my neighborhood. Get 30% of my neighborhood to reduce their food waste by composting by December 23.
I love
And
it.
there's 180 houses in my neighborhood, so that's 60 homes.
I think that's a great goal. Is there a way you might say it that your neighbors would like go, yeah, I want to do that too?
Right. I haven't done the marketing around it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But that's great. That's a great goal, measurable goal too. And really interesting. I wonder what barriers you're up against to do that. So I'd love to talk to you more about that over time.
Okay.
So I would be curious what kind of advocacy, and slightly different topic, but what kind of advocacy you would like to see us do relative to religious institutions in the area, just as a side note. So my goal is within the next 30 days, thoroughly research, visit and understand the Department of Interior plan on campus treeing. And within 45 days, brief at least one person in the office of the DoD Chief of Staff or CFO's office.
Okay, so those are definitely some short-term goals.
Yes.
Do you have an idea of what, well, DoD training is not exactly a grassroots campaign, is it? But is there like a compelling thing that would get all the generals excited? Like a goal that's
well, yeah, so
let's green our bases or something like that.
Yeah, so there's they use a lot of hydrocarbons to keep the grass up. That's number one. Number two, if you look at how, especially naval bases, if you look at how many sites there are in the overall federal government and DoD that are along waterways or oceans, and with the land sinking and the water rising, there's a lot of concern about that. So even though they tend to be a very conservative lot of people, there's an understanding that we all need to really do something, and the sooner the better. And there's the reduction of the hydrocarbons, but there's also the massive treeing that we can do as well. So, what I want to do is put together the financial analysis where we actually create a cradle to cradle versus cradle to cradle is just a lead note, so it's cradle to grave plan where maybe we, create this circular economy with trees where we have the nurseries and the caretakers, etc., and we get people off of welfare or people on disabilities very involved in that program. So, and I'm hoping that as I dive into it more, I find that there's something going on. The day that we all got shipped home from COVID 2 years ago, I was sitting down talking to somebody from the Army Chief of Staff office, and her answer was, "Oh yeah, we planted a few trees here and there." So, but we don't.
So Helene, I want to make sure we make space for other people. But
I'm sorry. Yeah.
You and I, no, it's okay. And I think you and I should talk about this because Environment America actually has worked on butterfly habitat on bases, and they've been successful. So we should figure out how they did that and what messaging and what goals they put together, because I bet they were really clear. Because with the Army, you have a lot of people you need to engage. So having a really compelling, clear goal is going to be really important. So, okay, let's see here. If anybody else want to share?
I don't know whether I'm muted or not.
We can hear you, Harriet.
You can hear me. I'll tell you what I need help with. I'm going to tell you the problem, and any ideas would be good. I became aware just recently in the last maybe 5 months that the Virginia state government purchases 32% of its electricity from West Virginia. And most of it is from Senator Manchin's coal generated electricity company. I would like to work on ways that the state of Virginia would be concurrently with however they're buying this electricity, that we're putting money in to develop electricity in Virginia by non-coal, non-gas, non-oil. Because I feel guilty polluting the air in West Virginia. So here in Virginia, we can buy electric cars and use the electricity from West Virginia. To me, there is something a little immoral in that.
Yeah, there's
So-
a big equity issue you're talking about there, and there is a lot of work happening around that.
Right.
So I think we can probably, that is one particular area where I know there's a lot of work happening. So
And
we
that's
should
the area
follow up on that.
I'm working on that right now.
Okay, that's
I
great.
mean, I'm doing the research on it. I want to see exactly how much electricity we're using in Virginia. Why are we promoting everybody to buy electric cars when we maybe don't have enough electricity for them to have their electric cars? I don't want us to do that by making some other state pollute more, so we can do something. There's something.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, folks, so I'm going to focus this a little. So just because this is a grassroots organizing training, and I just want to make sure we get through all the pieces. Is there anybody else who wants to share an actual, like a goal, just like it should be like one sentence and maybe just a tiny bit of background on what it's about?
Well, I have a goal.
Okay, Rick?
It's to pass a bottle bill here in Virginia.
So you know what my thing there is, I don't know what a bottle bill is. So
yeah.
is there a way to say it that would say what the bottle bill does that is compelling to me?
Compelling is harder. So it's to pass a single-use beverage container law for redemption, which, you know, the more you explain it, the more it loses. It doesn't get any clearer.
So how about something like reduce plastic bottles in Virginia?
The National Can Institute feels left out.
Okay, all right. I hear you.
We keep waste out of the landfills, Rick, or guarantee glass available for recycling, for repurposing. Like what's the outcome maybe?
Recycle or better recycling of food grade containers. Yeah.
Okay. This is hard work. I want to say, like, coming up with a compelling thing that's going to make sense to other human beings and get them excited about joining your campaign. It takes a lot of hard work. So I just want to say we're at the very beginning, obviously, in this exercise. And I really, really do encourage you to take a look. Like, there's a whole plastics campaign at Environment America that you might want to look at how they frame their goals. I bet you there's one you could steal, you know, or repurpose. Let's put it that way. You could recycle it. All right. I want to, I think we're going to move on, unless is anybody else really excited to share? Okay, let's move on to strategies. Oh, yep, go ahead.
No, I was going to say Doug has his hand raised.
Oh, Doug, I'm sorry. If people can tell me, because I'm looking at two computers. Go ahead.
All right. A very grassroots goal is a personal one of mine. I've formed a small team in my congregation to implement solar power for my congregation. My goal is to get to break ground in 2022 before the subsidy is reduced. In our case, because our roof is not suitable, we have to do a carport, so it gets a lot more complicated than typical situations. It has to be over the parking lot, so a lot of challenges, but it's well worth it.
Yeah. So for a carport, like to get people excited about that, I would probably make the messaging around like the shade they're going to get and, clean energy. There's all kinds of good language out there on clean energy. But again, okay, I'm just going to end this section. Grassroots goal should be something that your fellow humans can just grasp what you're up to, and they want to start swimming with you against all those big fish. So just like keep thinking just like a person who doesn't really know anything about all the nuts and bolts of what needs to happen. What is kind of that core issue that they would get excited to join you? Okay, so now we're going to move on to strategy. I'm going to confess, this is the one I struggle with the most. And I finally decided how to describe it. First of all, this is the definition: strategy, plan of action or policy designed to achieve a major or overall aim. So it's not any little thing. It's like your overall kind of thing, direction you're swimming in. So I want to use a metaphor that I think we're all really familiar with. So I would like to lose 30 pounds. And the strategies I could pursue are, I could eat less calories. I could build my muscle mass because that would burn more calories. I could do more aerobic exercise. But here's one that I'm actually thinking: I could just play more. I could have more fun with my friends doing things I enjoy, like hiking. And I know the weight will come off if I do more of that. So those are completely different strategies. Like eating less is completely different from exercising more, which is completely different, kind of just almost spiritually, from having more fun and playing more. So that's the kind of way. So strategy is like basically, how are you going to approach your overall work to get to your goal? So going into more of an advocacy frame, let's say you have a group of elected leaders and some of them are total champs on an issue. And then some are kind of wishy-washy, you don't know where they're at, and some are totally against. Well, you're probably not going to have a strategy to mobilize it or do anything around the people who are totally against it. You're just going to ignore them. But it might be the kind of issue where if you can lift up what the champs are saying or give them a really good way to move forward, you can have a champ strategy. Or you might want to concentrate on those that are kind of in the middle, that you're not quite sure where they are and you need to get them to do it. That's more of a pressure strategy. So anyway, that's strategy. Then you need to think about kind of where are you playing and who is your target. So for instance, with a lot of issues on climate change, you can address it at the federal level. A lot of people right now are pulling back from the federal level because of what just happened with the Build Back Better bill. And it's just really clear they don't have the votes to get anything done right now. But I'm going to be telling you about a campaign that I've been working on for years with hope for the federal level. Or you might pick the administration. A lot of people right now are pushing for President Biden to do climate emergency executive order. The problem is it will end up in court. So anyway, federal. Or you might want to concentrate on the state. Right now in Virginia, because of the governor, it's a little hard. But it's important to do defense work so the public knows what's going on, and we'll be informed about the impacts on climate that Governor Youngkin is not great on our issues. And then the Senate right now is still holding strong. They're kind of the green wall. And so you might want to do a lot of work bolstering kind of maybe the iffy people in the Senate or the House of Delegates. You know, you might right now, not a great place to work, but on the other hand, maybe you want to do something. It would be smart to do it there for whatever you're working on. It really depends on your issue. Then there's the regional level. As an example, the Transportation Planning Board is incredibly important on the overall planning of transportation in the DC region. So let's say you were working on stopping the Outer Beltway. That might be a group you want to, that's basically, by the way, a bunch of elected officials making decisions on transportation, or the Metropolitan Washington Council of Governments, same thing. They do a lot of the regional thinking, and it's mostly elected officials. And then, of course, there's local, and that is where FACTS does a lot of its work. So we do a lot of work with Board of Supervisors. We're doing more and more work with school boards, or you might live in a city, and those are usually called city councils. And then your target might be a corporation, or maybe it's an industry group. So anyway, it's really important to make these decisions. And because let's say you have a group of grassroots activists, if you're like playing in all these different places, you can get very scattered, and basically you're not kind of swimming in the same direction. So it's smart to think this particular piece of it through. I do want to say one thing, like we're going to be talking about federal right in this training, but we're thinking about federal investments in local climate solutions. So it is tied to the work that FACTS does in that way. Okay, so messaging is insanely important, and you need to put a lot of work into it. I'm going to show you what Environment America does for its messaging, but there is, 101 marketing books out there. So this is just like one example of what you could do. So in their case, they think about who are you trying to get to do what by when. That's pretty straightforward. So that's the goals we've been talking about. What's the problem we want to solve? Why would your audience even care about it? Like, why do they care about composting? Why would they care? What's the solution? Is change possible? Like you could have theoretically a goal that's like so pie in the sky that nobody's going to take you seriously. So that's not good. And why is your group or your plan the one to get it done? And that's really an important question if you're looking for investors, if you're looking for people like foundations to fund you. This one's super important for grassroots organizing. What can your audience do? How can they help? And how can you let them know how they can help? And then why is this urgent? Why should people join you in this effort versus, I don't know, go do the 100 other things they've got on their plate? So you've really got to create that sense of urgency. All right. And then finally, what would success look like and feel like if you actually won? That's really important to paint that vision of a brighter future that creates hope and is inspiring to people. So we're not going to spend time on this because there's another training on power communicating that you can come to, and we'll talk more about that stuff. So then to get any grassroots campaign really going, you need to have some resources, and that comes in all kinds of shapes and sizes. So first of all, you might have staff of organizations like me. You might have a group of volunteers, people like Chris and Rick who are on my board and do a massive amount of work, or somebody who just does a little bit of work. They're all valuable. You can often get students or interns who might get class credit, or a lot of colleges actually have paid programs where basically you get the labor for free and they pay for it because it's job experience for them. The university pays for it. Partnering is really important. We often work in this space in coalitions. And by the way, the Faith Alliance for Climate Solution is a great coalition partner because we bring the faith voice, and people love to have the faith voice at the table, and we're not really in competition much. So again, working with coalitions. And by the way, partners can also be like, corporate sponsors. There's all kinds of partners out there. Obviously money always helps. depending on what you need to do. And then having the equipment to do what you need, like having computers, et cetera. And then in this day and age, especially post-pandemic or during the pandemic, we're still there, what are your digital and online resources? And there's probably, 100 other resources I haven't talked about. But you want to give that thought. Now I'm getting into just a few of the tactics. There are 101 tactics you could choose to do. I'm just going to throw out a few that we do, but it totally depends on your grassroots campaign. Like public hearings might not be obviously something at all for your campaign, like composting in your neighborhood. This wouldn't be, but maybe your county is going to start doing something that's going to help all of its citizens compost more. In that case, you would definitely want to go to the public hearing. Okay, writing an opinion piece. This is one I do all the time. As you can see, this is 2 examples, one in the Washington Post, one in my local paper. And we're going to be talking about that more at the next training. So basically at the next training, we're doing a deeper dive on a few of the most powerful tactics you can use. Working with your local reporters. This is something called earned media versus paid media. And basically, if you get a reporter interested in what you're doing, they can get the word out to your community in a very powerful way. So that's a really great thing to do to court your local press. This particular article was amazing. He wrote I think he's headed to the Wall Street Journal or something. He's such a good reporter. And then getting active on social media. This is an example. We did a photo petition, and I think only 5 of us actually did it, but I actually got the chair of Fairfax County to commit to aggressive implementation of their climate action plan on Twitter. So I got it in black and white in writing from the chair of the county by doing this. So I really encourage you, if you're not active on social media and you want to make a difference on climate change, get active on Twitter. And we're going to be talking about that at the next training as well. Okay, so now, oh boy, we only have half an hour left. So this is a campaign that I ran at Environment America. So I'm extremely familiar with it. And I want to, by the way, I was going to put that in the chat. Hold on a second. What I want you to do as the next exercise is read through it and basically try to deconstruct, try to figure out what was the problem, what was the solution, what's the goal, what were the different tactics, were there any resources? Try to see if you can kind of figure out, because there was an entire campaign plan that was behind what you see on the website. So it's a way to basically put this into practice, but kind of going backwards. And by the way, you could take any of the things that they've got on their website and kind of deconstruct the campaign to try to figure out how they did it, because it's really smart to try to emulate people who have been doing this a long time. And, you can learn a lot, basically. It's like, how the master painters used to paint the masters, the students would paint the master's paintings, because it's good to emulate people to learn. So I'm going to put this campaign in the website, in the chat. There you go. So this is one of the exercises I also sent you in the document. So basically I put all the different pieces out. And so just take a few minutes and try to figure those basic sections out. And if you don't have what I'm talking about, please put it in the chat and I'll email it to you. But it was in the exercise document I sent to you. Whoops. Okay, Nadia, I'll send it to you. You know what, folks, I'm going to actually just go back to the slide with all of the campaign stuff on it, and you can just go off of the screen. So these are the basic elements of a campaign, and just try to deconstruct that climate, bridging the climate divide. Okay, folks, so I want to make sure we have time to talk about the rest of everything. So I'm sure you got about, 2 sentences into figuring this out, but does anyone want to say what the problem was that we were addressing here?
I think the divide within the Senate and the House between both between the government and the people, that the government's not representing people who are in danger from climate change. So appealing to people who, trying to bridge the divide by getting people to see what stake they have in this.
Yeah, and get them to talk to their elected officials.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we were really looking at areas. I'll give you an example. The district in North Carolina where the Outer Banks are, they keep getting hammered with climate change. And there's these beautiful, it's an old colony, right? So there's all these wonderful historic buildings. And we were trying to mobilize more conservative voices. So firefighters, historic preservationists, people kind of not your usual climate activist suspects, to get them talking with people so that basically my goal is, whether you're a Republican, a Democrat, or any other party, your people are so fired up about the impacts to their community that you have no choice but to act on climate. And I'm hoping to do that sooner than later, because we can wait until things get really bad, or things are already bad enough that I think we can get there. Anyway, that was the thought behind this campaign. And there's a lot more to it, but anyway, I recommend just really going through this exercise fully as homework to try to deconstruct, just to kind of get in your mind how these different elements of a plan work. Okay, so now we're going to move forward to talk about the really core of what I want to do together. So we clearly at the federal level need to make climate change a top priority issue, and it's not. It's also not a top priority issue for voters. You always hear it, like nowadays it's inflation and gas prices and things like that, and the economy. But we all know who work on this issue that this is, literally an existential issue, and we've got to just up it. So how are we going to do that? Well, first of all, we know, looking at public opinion data, that Americans are worried about it, but somehow it's just still not up at the top of their issues. So we need to work on making it so. So right now, I want to talk about two representatives who are in Congress who represent very vulnerable areas. And they've both been actually really great on climate. But it's, not clear, like if in the next election, a Republican, it would be great for someone who represents the Eastern Shore of Virginia and the Hampton Roads area to be among those people who just work on climate because their people are demanding it. So right now, Representative Luria is the elected official, and her district is changing. So the next person in this area, this is what their district will look like. So it's still going to be the Eastern Shore, and then it's Virginia Beach, where Doug's church is. And then it kind of swings around Norfolk and down to goes into Isle of Wight. By the way, that's where Smithfield is, where Smithfield Ham was founded. So anyway, okay. So then we're going to talk about Representative Spanberger. She's kind of famous. She was the one who was recorded on a phone call with the Democrats and her party, the other representative, saying, my district is more conservative. Like, I can't be doing this radical stuff. I don't remember exactly what she said, but it was all over the press. But that, that central part of Virginia it's definitely not Queens, New York. Let's put it that way. So this is what her new district is going to look like, that she's going to she's running in. And it includes part of Prince William County, including a national park where there's a really hot local issue happening. So I hope you all had a chance to read what I sent you. It was cut and pasted from their websites, from their congressional websites. And basically, if you Google their names and climate change, you'll see that they are very supportive of acting on climate, but they come at it from some, frames that I think are really good for bridging the climate divide. For instance, Elaine Luria talks about national security, because there's no question that climate change is a national security issue. She talks a lot about protecting water, so the Chesapeake Bay in particular. And then if you look at Abigail Spanberger's work on this, it's all around conservation and agriculture, which makes a lot of sense because of the district that she represents. So we want to do,
Water and agriculture.
I'm sorry, what was that?
My apologies. I thought I was muted. Sorry.
Oh, okay. So I actually got a very little grant to work on this with you all. And we have a few deliverables that I want to do through these trainings. And I want to just be really transparent of what our goals are. So first of all, I'm going to do 3 trainings with at least 7 students. We have done that already. I want to put together with you one meeting with Representative Spanberger herself or with her staff. Normally, you actually just get to meet with the staff, and it could be in her district or it could be in DC. And of course, everybody's doing virtual nowadays. Same with Representative Luria. We want to get one opinion piece published somewhere. It can be a little paper, it could be a big paper. we want to do 4 photo petitions with the representative tagged. And that's what an example I showed you was with the chair of Fairfax County. But in this case, we want to do it with Spamberger and Loria. And then 15 social media posts where the representative is tagged. So not necessarily with a picture with holding a sign, just a kind of more simple social media post. And we'll be working on these, by the way, in the next training as well, of course. And then just 5 emails to the representative, like basically saying, like, Doug, if we could get 5 of your church members to send a note to Representative Gloria, it'd be great. And we'll be talking about what message we might want to say in that note. And then 25 signatures on a petition to either representative. So I want to talk about that one next. Well, oh no, I'm sorry. So here's the message that I was thinking would work. First of all, we saw in the public opinion data that Virginians support climate action. And we're already seeing the impacts with the sea level rise, especially in their districts, and they're also tidal rivers. And then, of course, increased flooding and wind from the crazy rains we've been getting. We're getting increased heat and humidity, which is putting people's health at risk. And we know, by the way, one of the most compelling messages is health and the climate emergency, as well as what we're leaving to our children. Research shows that those are the 2 most effective messages to put out to the public. So, and of course, it's going to be much more severe if Congress doesn't act, and they seem to be yet again at gridlock. And we know that Virginians support solutions. The clean energy is very popular, offshore wind turbines and electric school buses. So then I'd like to look at their web pages and like what I talked to you about, that Spamberger is really into the conservation and agriculture angle on this issue, and Loria on national security and renewable energy. And then thank them for their leadership. You always, when somebody has done the right thing, it's really important to say thank you. So they passed the bipartisan infrastructure bill, which is helping communities now. So for instance, the $500 million for electric school buses, that's happening right now. There was also a lot of EV infrastructure money in that bill. So we could say thank you for that. And then just recognizing the House had actually passed a strong reconciliation bill, but it died in the Senate. But it's important to say thank you, for doing your part in the House. But now, obviously, we need to regroup. And I think it would be good to ask the office staff, or if we could get one of the representatives would be even better, what's your advice and how can we help? Like, I don't know if, maybe we could invite Representative Loria to the church in Virginia Beach and have this conversation, because obviously Virginia Beach is so vulnerable and Congress is at gridlock again. So anyway, that's the message I'm recommending. And then for the petition, what I thought we could work on, there's a super hot issue happening in Prince William County that has it's a local decision. It's going to be a decision of the Board of Supervisors, but it has a total national impact. And that's data centers that they want to put right on, that are being proposed right on the border of 2 national parks. Manassas National Park is actually not in Spamberger's district. It's up in Wexton's district, but it's the same county. And then Prince William National Park has the exact same problem. And that is right in the area that Spamberger is, would be representing if she wins her next election. So she'll care about, I promise you she'll care about this issue. So, and just to give you a visual of what I'm talking about, they're basically talking about putting massive industrial buildings in this area to the right of Pageland Lane, right on the border of the parks. I just happen to have pictures of the Manassas one, but imagine the same thing for Prince William Forest. Okay, so I wrote up a petition, and to tell you the truth, I actually already have a bunch of signatures on another petition we did that went to multiple senators and representatives, but I thought this is something we could work on together. For those of you, I was thinking particularly Leanne and Jack, we might want to work on this together. But with grassroots organizing, although it's important that you have constituents when you go and talk to the elected official, anybody in America could work on this, you know, because they might care because it's national parks. We have a stake in it. And with grassroots organizing, also, you can go, like, if it's an issue you care about and you want to go over to West Virginia and help them do grassroots organizing, you can do that work, even though you're not a West Virginian. You know what I mean? So it's always more powerful if you're organizing right in your community, because it's your community that you know really well, but you can also help get stuff done elsewhere. And in this case, the stake is parks that belong to all of us. Okay, so for exercise number 5, what I wanted to just have you do is think through, okay, as a grassroots organizer, how could you help with this conundrum we're in right now, that we're in gridlock once again in Congress? And by the way, the reason Congress is so important is they control so much money and so many policies that are critical for us to get to, you know, a stable climate. So what of the things, and I'm going to go back to these metrics, you know, what of those would you want to work on? And I want you to write that down and your ideas for it and let me know. And you can, I'll put my email in the chat, and maybe you could write up your ideas in an email to me. I think that's probably the easiest way. So think about that for a few minutes and then we'll come back and talk about it. By the way, everybody, on the petition, just so you know, Representative Wexton actually wrote a letter, and that's could be the ask for Spamberger to basically just write a letter to the board and say, you know, this will have an impact on 2 of our national parks. Not a good idea. Okay, so we don't have a lot of time, so I'm going to just push ahead because I want to give you a few more words of advice. And please do follow up with an email to me. So first of all, I just want to say it's an election year, and sometimes we are nonpartisan at FACTS. We do not get involved in electoral politics at all. That would actually be illegal. But it is totally fine to lift up your issue during an election time. So for example, going to a congressional debate or a town hall and asking a question about climate change would be totally appropriate for us to do. Having a candidate forum where we invite everybody and presuming we would get candidates from both parties to say yes, we could host an event like that. And in fact, we're hoping to do that on September 22nd. Hopefully we'll get members of both parties to say yes. And then you can be out there holding signs. And, you know, I love this image of the earth. It's kind of, hopefully it's LED lights, sustainable lights. But anyway, I just want to point out that it's actually during an election year really important for nonprofits to be loud and clear. And there's actually a whole book about this, about how to do this legally. Okay, so some wisdom from me having done this for many, many years. First of all, just being flexible, I think is in some ways the most important thing you need to do as a grassroots organizer, because activists can be intense. I can be intense. You saw I started crying at the beginning of this training. It's just, we are people who care really deeply about this stuff, and sometimes things get intense. And that can be hard. So just know that that's just kind of comes with the territory. You're going to encounter all kinds of personalities, commitment levels, motivations, opinions, skill sets, and sometimes it can be really frustrating. Sometimes it can be amazing. I will tell you, one of the people who flamed me with a pretty, intense email when I was doing the rural Loudoun work. She ended up becoming one of my best activists. So just remember that if somebody flames you, they might just be your best activist in the making. And it's okay to let a group take on its own character. In grassroots organizing, it's important to not be a control freak. So basically let people, you want to mold them, you want to get them swimming in the same direction, but let them be themselves. And that's really important when you're dealing with elected officials, because elected officials deal with everybody. So it's good to have that diversity. It's also okay to start another group. And in fact, this is a power building tactic. When I was working in Loudoun, sometimes there would just be total disagreement about how to move forward on something. And we would just start another group and it totally worked. Everybody was happy. And we had another group working on saving rural Loudoun, and we built our power. And then building a diverse coalition. Joe was talking about this earlier, and Chris, it is just so important that we have voices of the whole community working on these things. And if you look around and you only see, for instance, white people, there's something going on. You are not connecting with the full community, and you're missing that power, and you're probably maybe not quite getting things right because you're missing whole sections of your community. So just keep that in mind. And you really want to have as a core value building a diverse coalition. And that takes work and commitment to make it happen. Okay, then, like I said, with all that diversity, try to keep them swimming in the same general direction, because that's how you get the big fish and, the big fish of little fish. And I want to say that just focusing on shared values is really key. If you can kind of get down to that deep, what people really value, and let disagreements about some of the littler stuff just be, that's a way to kind of keep people together. You do need to be a leader. It's really easy, especially when you're a volunteer, to just go, I don't want to deal with this, but we really need, we've got to solve the climate crisis, and, step up and be that leader who brings people together and keeps them going. And finally, remember to have fun, because especially with this issue, we can get super serious. So make sure to have fun. So this is just some of my friends from 350 Loudoun. Remember this, Natalie? We had a lot of fun with this group. We took care of each other. Literally, one of our members died of a brain tumor, and we were there at the hospital with her. And we celebrated our wins, and it was really an awesome group that made a difference in Lauderdale for a while. And then most important, you need to take care of yourself. Again, this is hard work that takes perseverance. So nurture yourself. I have to always remember I don't exercise enough. Exercise, get your nutrition, rest, feel your feelings. This is tough work, and we are dealing with really sad stuff, and don't bury it. Feel your feelings, and it's okay to be human even in front of other people. Ask for support if you need it. And then I'm going to share a couple of pieces of art that have kept me going. Be a half-hearted warrior. I'll show you the piece about that somebody gave me in my early days, probably my first year of being a grassroots organizer. And then find peace in our beautiful world, because it is an amazing world that we have the honor to live on right now. And so I'm going to share a couple pieces of art with you. This is Edward Abbey. I love, this is Wise Elder gave this to me when I was starting out. And basically the point is, get out there and enjoy this amazing earth that we live on, and go hiking and enjoy the nature. And then I love at the end, I promise you this, you will outlive those other people. By the way, being angry is okay too. I like to think even for us faith people, Jesus got mad at the money collectors in the temple. So it's okay to be upset once in a while, but make sure you enjoy nature. Okay, and then I'm going to play this piece that I just love.
The peace of wild things. When despair for the world grows in me, and I wake in the night at the least sound, in fear of what my life and my children's lives may be, I go and lie down where the wood drake rests in his beauty on the water, and the great heron feeds. I come into the peace of wild things, who do not tax their lives with forethought of grief. I come into the presence of still water, and I feel above me the day-blind stars waiting with their light. For a time, I rest in the grace of the world and am free.
That is a beautiful poem that has kept me going many times. Okay. Now, how do I get to the next? Okay, so finally, we're going to end on homework, which is to write your plan. So this was in the document that I sent you all. Again, if you didn't get the attachments, let me know, and I'm happy to send it to you again. But I want you to go through after this training and think about, the composting or the renewables or getting off of West Virginia dirty energy, and how might you do it. And I really recommend you do this within the next few days while everything we've talked about is fresh on your mind. Oh, and what does victory look like? And then finally, this again is our organization. And if you aren't involved with us, it's a really great group of people that are doing a lot of wonderful grassroots organizing together. And especially for those of you who are beginning, we're a very friendly group that brings, you can learn a lot and really make a difference. And then finally, please keep in touch. And it's really been an honor to spend these 2 hours with you. And I can't believe I actually ended right at 6.